Welcome to another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a new guest. The new guest today is Ben Oliver. He is the head of performance at Suprahuman Official, which he's quite rightly advertising today. His tagline, or their tagline, is turning soft CEOs into savage CEOs. He's an ex-hobbyist bodybuilder and ex-basketball player. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ben Oliver.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, mate. You're very welcome. Is this a first podcast appearance? You've been on some before?
I've been on a few. This is probably maybe the fourth or the fifth. I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So some experience, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you like it? Like, how do you find it?
I love it. Because you tend to go off on different tangents and things that maybe you don't plan on talking about certain topics, but they kind of just crop up. But as you can tell, I just love talking about all things mindset, fitness, nutrition. That I can talk all day. So podcasts are great fun.
Do you listen to any yourself?
I do. Modern Wisdom.
Yeah, nice.
By Chris Williamson. Anything that Alex Hormozy puts out, huge fan of. They're probably I don't really listen to Joe Rogan, but Modern Wisdom's probably the most current one. There is another guy, I always forget his name though, and he had Alex Hormozy on the other day. But is it like the something millionaire?
Oh yeah, not. Oh no, I'm thinking of Diary of a CEO. His book.
That's the one. No, that is the one.
Yeah,
that is the one. Yeah. Listen to that. That's quite good.
What's the reason for not being a fan of Rogan? Just
it's not that I'm not a fan. It's just like the guests and things. I've watched a couple of them. Like Lane Norton's been on there.
Yeah.
I've watched some of the debates that he's had with Paul Saladino, like the carnivore guy and stuff. But it just like a lot of it just turns into an argument. Yeah. Where it's not really like a constructive debate, and then it almost just feels a bit negative. And I'm like, I don't want to watch just two men arguing with each other. Like that doesn't serve me. And like, what can I take from this and implement? And it's like this isn't really just anything that I can do. And honestly, I just don't have the time. So it's just I used to listen to podcasts when I would do like my cardio in the gym or if I'm out walking or something, but then it just started to feel like I was working whilst I was walking. And so now I just listen to music. Like it's
nice. Strictly
if I'm walking, it's nothing work or education related. It's just like me time.
Yeah, amazing. Ben, I want to start. We spoke a little bit about college already in the little chat we had before coming into recording the show. But your fitness journey, your health journey, whatever you want to call it, looking after yourself potentially is another way of putting it, started at such a young age in comparison to myself, who's obviously gone into the bandwagon of mindset, fitness and health quite late on in comparison to you. What was the draw for you to want to look after yourself? Obviously, you was playing basketball at the time, you were training hard, but what was the draw for you at the time?
Yeah, really it kind of stemmed from, so my dad was a natural bodybuilder when I was at secondary school at Stanchester, and at that time I was a bit overweight, and so my older brother, like the only thing he had on me was that I was fat, and I was just like, God, I just need to get rid of this one thing, and then he can't say anything, and then I got into lifting. Just my dad just taught me the basics like squat, bench, deadlift, kind of stuff. Never pushed me into it, but I think because I was heavier, I was just stronger than the skinny kids because I had better leverages and weight moves weight to an extent. And so made me feel good, wanted to do more of it, and then moved from Stokes-upon-Hamden to Yeovil. And I literally lived a 2-minute walk away from the college. And then at the time, Lloyd Morgan, who lived there as well, he said, well, they let you join the gym at 15. And so I was like, and it was like £25 for the year or something absurd. And so we were like, cool. So I went down there and then I just lived in that gym for like the next probably like 4 years, till I went to university. Just nearly every day I was in that gym. And that's probably what sparked it, is just the combination of like the love of training and just improving, but also just the people down there. Because you had, I was a kid, but it's like you had Donna Crichton in there, shifting serious weight. You had Sam Backwell. like Lloyd was in there. Andrew Roda, was coaching those guys, who's still a hero of mine.
Yeah.
And so it just being around those people, you can't not get better or want better for yourself. So yeah, that's probably what kind of just started the whole thing off.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So you had your dad, who was a really positive role model in terms of the fitness scene, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course a future S&C coach of yours when you actually went to college in Andy Roda. I think Andy will openly admit, like, I think people either love or not hate him. That's like a really strong word.
Agreed.
But he does get the best out of you if you're willing to put the work in. So what were the
Yeah.
things that you took away from Andy and all of his knowledge?
I mean, exactly what you said. You either love him or dislike him. And I think one thing with Andy is kind of once he has his opinion of you, it's very difficult to change that opinion. And so I was quite lucky that I remained on the positive side of him for the majority. But
Yeah.
I think really it was he really pushed the basics of training, where I was in that phase of reading everything I could find on training, and I was trying a new program every single week. And he'd ask me what I was doing, and he'd be like, "That's nonsense. You need to just, get a bigger squat." And I would kind of listen, but then kind of not. But he still just, I think the fact that I trained hard and always turned up, that's probably the biggest thing that I learned from it, is like, you just have to show up. Like every single week in, week out, day in, day out, show up to your training session on time, get it done, and be consistent. I didn't learn anything magical about training principles or anything from him. It was more just like be a good person and show up. I think they're probably the biggest things that I learned from that man. But love him dearly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
incredible.
great.
When you say be a good person, do you think that stems from being a good person to, did he mean like be a good person to yourself by turning up to the training sessions, or
I
did he
think it was.
mean both kind of elements?
I think it was probably more of just. I take that back. It wasn't be a good person. It was be a professional.
Right.
In that he would treat that rugby team like it was England or something, and the way that he expected people to carry themselves at college, not just on the pitch but in training. And then if you were a second or a third year, he would make it very clear that it's like, you are to set an example for the first years. And it was the whole sports department of teams, especially the rugby, it was run very professionally at that college. And I mean, I remember it was like, I think it was England, Lloyd, Jake Woolmore, who still plays, who's killing it,
Phenomenal.
and
Yeah.
they were all like English schools, or England colleges players, and they were fantastic. But it was the culture that Andrew had built of just being professional. So yeah, I say less be a good person, but be a professional. And so days I didn't want to train, it was like, would a professional train? Yeah. So to go to the gym.
Is that something that you've gone on to, you're in America at the moment, which we'll come on to shortly, I'm sure. But is that something, it may be an obvious question because I think the answer is yes, but I'd love you to put it in your own words. Is that something that you've made sure that you've taken into your future adult life?
Yeah. So I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense of any jobs that I've had, I've always done my best and tried to be the best person on the team, or as good as I could be, whether it was gym instructor, personal trainer, anything like that. I would always try and do my best and be professional. From the academic side, once I left college and went to university, I kind of lost interest in the studying side and doing dissertations and stuff. Like, I was a very mediocre academic student. Could I have done better? 100%. I just really didn't want to. I wanted to be on the gym floor. It's like I wanted to be coaching people and sitting in a classroom with a fat lecturer telling me, what a healthy diet should look like. I'm like, you don't work with people, like, because how could you? And so that kind of separated my kind of like my work life, my academic life, in that I was very professional with work. school, it was like, just turn up, do the minimum, get it
Mm.
done. And then in personal, I'm 32 now, and I'd like to think I've grown up a little bit, but could definitely have carried myself more professional in my personal life over the last couple of years for sure.
It's interesting as well. So I've spoken to many people on the podcast, and when it comes to coaching, there's normally a trigger of why somebody would want to go into coaching others in an element of fitness, or whether it be mental health or mindfulness, whatever it may be, yoga. There'd be a benefit of why somebody wants to teach yoga that they've had from it themselves. With you, what was the thing that made you want to go into the realm of fitness and helping others?
I think partly because I'm good at it. I
Nice.
think I've always had a good natural skill of being able to read people and build rapport with people, make conversation, become someone's friend, figure out what they need and how to help them. I think another component is, selfishly, it makes me feel good. I like helping people. I don't think you can truly help other people for no, and you just do it to help other people, because there's always some plus that you get, which is, yeah, it makes me feel good. Like, helping an old lady with her shopping makes me feel good. I'm doing her a favor, everyone wins, so I think it makes me feel really good being able to have an impact on someone's life, whether it's weight loss, strength, building muscle, getting confidence. Makes me feel really good. So I think I just did more of it, got better at it, got more experience, and it's just been one of those things that I can't see myself doing anything else now. Even though my role, I'm sure we'll go into it a bit more, but like, my role now is far more like managing and leading a team rather than coaching one-on-one with clients, but it's still coaching. It's just taken another form now rather than nutrition and training focused.
Yeah, incredible, mate. You speak so well as well, which I can definitely tell. And being 32, in terms of conversationally wise and probably knowledge wise, conversationally, is that a word? We're going to go with it anyway. But you definitely are ahead of your time. What was interesting there is you mentioned about you wanted to improve or try and help people with their nutrition, and it was building muscle, losing fat, whatever it was. But then you mentioned about improving people's confidence, which for me, obviously, with like 9 times out of 10, that's the kind of route I go down. Is the mindset behind fitness and health and the positives that I love to speak about. So for you, where does confidence come from?
It comes from having evidence that I've done the thing. And so I think one of the biggest kind of misconceptions that people will have is that you need to be confident to try something, when most people have no confidence, but you can still try something with no confidence. But confidence is built by doing the thing and then having the evidence that you can do the thing over and over and over. And so I'm a very confident coach, and that's not arrogant of me, because I have a ton of evidence of success. And so if I didn't have that, I'm either delusional or I'm arrogant, because I would say arrogance is where you can't back it up.
Mm.
And so if someone goes, yeah, I'm the best player on the team, especially in English culture, we're not very braggy. I think it's like we all downplay our successes. America's completely different. But I think you say I'm the best player on the team and everyone's like, all right, showboat. But it's like, well, if you looked objectively, I score the most goals, I have the most saves, like all of these things. It's like, statistically, I am the best player. But we still view it as like, all right, like arrogant. But it's like, no, it's like, that's fact.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think the confidence in the coaching just comes from, I've done it for, over 10 years now, and have a large amount of evidence that I know what I'm talking about. For me anyway. I think initially from training, it was seeing the self-improvement, but again, it's like, I have evidence that I've improved at this thing. And so it's like, my bench press has gone up 10 kilos. Like, there's proof I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And then obviously you get a bit of external validation from people giving you compliments and things. And that drives you to do better. Like, not that we want to lean on, that validation to make us whole, but compliments feel nice. And it kind of just reinforces kind of wanting to do more of that thing. So I think it just builds over time, just by doing the thing over and over.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because I'm sure you have seen my journey or some of it, seems though we've been planning this podcast for a couple of weeks. And one of the things that definitely spurred me on the most at the start, when I was losing weight as the start point of my journey, was people saying, "Bloody hell, Harry, you look good, you look different." And then
Yeah.
obviously it's important that you don't rely on those things. Have you ever had to deal with that challenge with clients before?
Um, with clients, I think I make sure I have lots of initial conversation. Like a lot of the initial conversation when we onboard new clients is finding the why as to why they want to make the change, and that's where we can spot those potential red flags of like, well, my wife wants me to get in shape, and it's like, okay, but then if she turns around tomorrow and says that she doesn't care, do you still want to get in shape? And so it's like, unless it comes from within, it's very fleeting. And even, you know, I've gone on record and said, like, you know, people will say I'm doing this for my kids so I can be around and, you know, play with my kids, which sounds very noble. It's still not enough. And it's like the moment the kids want to sit and watch Netflix, you'll sit on your ass and watch Netflix as well. And it's like it has to come from a deep, you know, there's two reasons why you do something: pain or pleasure. And pain is, I would say, far more powerful, in that if you're trying to escape a situation that you're in, you will work 10 times harder than going towards something which you think is going to be great. And so I would imagine the initial driver for you to start losing weight was you were just extremely uncomfortable with where you were. It
Mm.
wasn't the allure of having a six pack. It's, I don't want to be this anymore. And so it's like the rat in the tube. There's a whiff of a cat or the cheese. Like, they're going to run 10 times faster when they smell the cat, like, compared to running towards the cheese. And so I could say to you, if you squat 200 kilos in 6 weeks, I'll give you £1,000,000. You'll be like, game on. Or I could say, squat 200 kilos in 4 weeks, or I kill all your family. Like, you're going to, like, which one's going to motivate you more?
Yeah.
You know, and so you find a lot of times the people's drive is just to run away from pain, and it's a very potent driver, but it's not sustainable for a happy or fulfilling life. I think if you're just constantly just running off pain, then you never get to smell the roses, so to speak. But I will say, like, you have to use what you have at the start. And so if all you have is pain and discomfort, you may as well use it to something productive. And so rather than, you know, if you say that, you know, go back to the start of your journey and all the conversations we had were, no, you should just love yourself, you know, for how you are. Like, you know, don't feel uncomfortable. Like, and then you're like, you know what, like, I'm good. You might never lose the weight. Whereas it's like, okay, if you feel really uncomfortable right now, let's just start, and then we'll work on that as we go. And then it kind of slowly goes from pain to pleasure as you transition. But it's like, that's a powerful fuel source that, like, you shouldn't ignore it, I think. Like, most successful people, they do it because of something that they really dislike about themselves.
Oh,
and they use it as a massive driver. And I'm like, well, you use what you have, you know. And so I'm all for it.
yeah, mate. Insane way of putting it. And is there, going on like a personal note, obviously you're very much involved with Suprahuman now, as being one of their lead coaches, head of performance. You've obviously go on these journeys yourself with regards to your changing your body in a more positive way, and you've been doing that all the way through your fitness journey, let's call it. Is there some pain that potentially you're running away from as well, or is that something that you've handled
Sure.
through? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the initial kind of driver for me to get into training was to stop being bullied by my brother. Um, and even at school, and I didn't know this till, like, it had been going around for months and I never heard of it. But, like, my nickname was like Burger Ben,
Wow.
like at Stanchester, and I was like, but it was until that point I didn't even realize myself that I was fat, because no one had ever told me. And then I kind of realized, and it was like, I had a few months where I was like really miserable and was just like, I'm the fat kid. And it was rough. And so that was the driver for me, for a long time. was to not stand out and to not be the fat kid. It wasn't to be in great shape. It was to not be a loser, like kind of thing, or what I deemed was a loser.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think down the line, probably over the last couple years, not so much the last year or two, but it's very easy that, like you were saying, when you go through that initial journey and you get the compliments and most areas of your life improve because of your fitness. But it can be very easy to fall into the trap down the line of when things aren't going your way in your life, you kind of have this subconscious thought of, well, last time life was shit, I just had to train harder and it solved all my problems. And so it's like, for me now, getting to 10% body fat doesn't improve my life at all. Like, I can look in the mirror and be like, cool, obliques, that's awesome. Doesn't improve my relationships, doesn't improve my ability as a coach, doesn't improve my empathy, doesn't improve anything. And so I can now separate the two, that it's like I'm doing that stuff for me. It's not going to solve, underlying issues that I have or issues that I'm experiencing in my life. Like, that's going to have to be dealt with like directly, not just trying to overcompensate. I think that's why most men do fucking Ironman when they're in their 40s, because they're just escaping from their wives. It's like, just get on the bike for 40 hours a week, don't deal with the actual issue. But yeah, I think that's probably my experience with it.
Yeah, amazing. And it is interesting. What you say is those experiences stick with you, don't they? And I'm not sure whether something that goes through my head all the time is like, if potentially I have like a bad, it's going to sound like potentially not a healthy thing, but it is a healthy thing if you ask me, is when I have a bad weekend, or just a weekend of being normal and not focusing on the fitness stuff and not worrying about nutrition, a few beers or a stag do or something like that. You come back, you assess yourself, obviously you're not feeling the greatest, but then that trigger of the feeling of how you used to feel is there, and then that reminds you that you don't want to carry on in that way. Is that something as well that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think so with things like eating disorders, so like bulimia and anorexia and stuff. There's no cure. There's if you have those symptoms and you've experienced that, there is no cure of just getting rid of it. The goal is to really make that voice in your head so quiet that it doesn't impact your day to day, but it's always there. And and I think if anyone's lost a significant amount of weight, that kind of fat kid monster is always in there. And
You're telling me.
and so like you have a weekend like that and you step on the scale and you're up 5 pounds, and that voice just starts getting a little bit louder, and you're like, oh god, it's happening again. And then you have to kind of like put it back in its cage and be like, no, like, we're going to get back on track. And so I don't think that's necessarily unhealthy. It's just being aware of it. In that, I've seen this with so many clients that have lost, like, say, like 50, 60, up to 100 pounds, where when we switch to a maintenance phase, if they have like a big weekend or something, once you've lost that much weight, you're susceptible to far bigger weight fluctuations on the scale. And so you may have only had, a burger and fries, but you're up 7 pounds the next day and you're like, oh my God, like, I only went over by 1,000 calories. What the hell is this? Whereas a lean person, maybe they even lose weight, after that. And so one thing that I work with them is, one, that's part of their life now, where they are going to get these bigger weight fluctuations, and that's okay. It's just going to be a water flux. But also, just because they go off their plan for 1 or 2 days doesn't mean they're suddenly going to wake up 100 pounds heavier. And because that's the thoughts that they have. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have to start all again. And it's kind of just reassuring them that they're not the same person anymore. Like, they don't have the same identity, the same habits, the same routines. It will be impossible for them to go back to that. But that voice is always there. It's just, the goal is to just make it nice and quiet.
Yeah, mute it. Have the option to be able to press the mute button on it and continue, which I would imagine that, I would imagine I'm fully in control of it, but I say fully in control of it. You can't be in control of it at all times, right? And and because you have social things that you want to be part of and you don't want to miss out on them. But then it's, of course, having the choice to be able to press the mute button and say, right, Fat Harry, it's time to go to bed again for a few months. But it's interesting that it's such an uncommon thing, and that voice, whatever it is, shows up in different ways, doesn't it? Like you say, bulimia, even anxiety, or post-traumatic stress. Like, all of these things can show up and have a negative input on somebody's life, but having the ability to press mute on it is sometimes as good as it's going to get for somebody.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I mean, so over the last year, I've personally worked with a therapist, a guy called James Elliott, who is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met in my life. But just the conversations that we have about this stuff is changed my perspective on it, from a coaching standpoint as well, which has been awesome, because I kind of go through this. So when I was younger, I was very immature. Like, even when I started coaching, and I would kind of treat every client like they wanted to be big and shredded, because I did. So I'm putting my expectations on everyone else. And also I would always play down mental struggles. So like, if someone said I'm depressed, I'd be like, fucking grow up. Like, you got a roof over your head, life's good, get over it. Like, people have it far worse. Like, if people had anxiety, I would say, like, you're just a bit worried. Like, everyone's worried, like, you're fine. And it wasn't until I kind of realized that I was truly experiencing like depression, like over this past year, I was like, oh, it's real. And I think you really know that when like externally, this past year has been fantastic. It's been like, made a ton of money, coaching with two of my bestest friends, who are part of this company as well, get to work with amazing people, get to travel the world, work from home, really good. And internally, I was fucking miserable, and was just like, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then it would be the chasing that external validation, where it's like, I need someone else to tell me that I'm good, for me to feel good about myself. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of like self-worth and guilt and all of these things. But it's an interesting one, where we're kind of at this point now in society where, like, yes, these things are real, like anxiety and depression and things, but also there's a large amount of the population that will take advantage of that when they really aren't depressed. They're just a bit sad, and they're really not anxious. Like, they're not anxious about their exams. They're just worried because they give a shit. It's like, that's good. That's a positive thing. If you weren't anxious at all, you're probably going to fail, because you're not worried about it. And so you have to, and this is the hardest thing, because it's kind of on a continuum. It's like, you're not depressed or not, you're not happy or not. It's, how happy are you? How depressed are you? How anxious are you? And there's no kind of like, well, this is the threshold, and once you're over this, you are officially anxious. It's just, it's like this ongoing, and every day you're like this, up and down. Like, I have days where I'm really anxious, other days where I'm not. I have days where I feel a bit sad, and other days where I feel great. And so I think viewing your feelings as a continuum, rather than I'm sad or I'm happy. It's always like, how much of it are you? I think, one, it takes the pressure off of, like, you are not that thing. It's just, you're experiencing a little bit of that thing at this moment.
Yeah.
But then also, I think just having the skill set of, okay, I'm like, my heart rate's elevated, I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling this way? Let's analyze it and look at, is it like 9 times out of 10, anxiety is having a conversation, maybe with yourself or with someone else, that you don't really want to have. And people will just put it off and off and off, whether it's like a task that you have to do, you have to fire someone, you need to break up with someone, you need to like talk to a friend about something. It's normally unspoken conversations that cause that anxiety. And then I think a lot of depression is dwelling on the past, where people always say, like, anxiety is worrying about the future, depression is dwelling on the past. And again, like, I think my brain is very logical, and like the past only exists in my memories. Like, because all we have is this moment right now. Like, and it's like, and it's gone, and it's gone. And all we have is just the memories in my head. And so really that past doesn't even exist other than the past that I've created with my perception that's in my memory. And so maybe it did happen that way. Maybe it didn't. Like, all I have is this memory, and either way, I can't change it. And so it's, I think, just that skill set of trying to be as present as possible, which is a skill that you're forever practicing. Like, you never just go, no, I've got it. Because I mean, I'm away with the fairies most of the time. It's like, and I have to work on that skill constantly, because I'll be thinking about work, about other things, like about ideas and stuff. And it's like, or I could just sit and enjoy my coffee, like, and take it for what it is right now. But it's a skill set that you have to just kind of master over time, for sure.
In regards to the one saying that stemmed to mind then on at the end point where you got to was, what you can't say thank you for will rule your life as well. So even if something, there are examples where maybe you can't say thank you for something, and those are the ones that really do embed in people's minds and can cause obviously real severe mental health issues. But 9 times out of 10, whatever that situation may be, whether it be a really bad breakup or an argument with your parents, there are reasons that you could look back and say thank you for. You may not be able to think of them consciously. It may literally it may need you to sit down, with a piece of paper and actually go, right, I'm going to give this 15 minutes to work out how I can say thank you for this moment that has affected me negatively. But as soon as you can, officially in your own brain, find some logic to be able to say, okay, that wasn't perfect, but I've learned X, Y, and Z from the situation, and it's made me who I am today, then that guilt will go away. And the other thing that I would say is, in terms of modern day life, and it's something I've spoken about on the podcast before, and something that's quite in the forefront of a lot of people's minds in the fitness and the mental health coaching scheme, yeah, we'll go with scheme, is that happiness is such a funny word, because I think it takes for you to learn that you're not supposed to feel happy all the time, to be able to take that lesson and go, oh, okay, that's why I'm feeling this negative emotion today. And then being okay with that negative emotion. Whereas I think it comes with from experience, life experience, and time with potentially just yourself, and being self-aware enough to know, today I feel good, but I still need to manage how I'm looking after myself and keep this kind of tangent going of how I'm feeling. But on the days where you wake up and you don't feel like you've got the energy that you want, and you maybe feel a bit sad for some unbeknown reason, it's having the experience, like you say, to go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm not feeling great today, but I'm human. Number one, we're supposed to feel these changing emotions, as you say, it's like tangible emotions. And also, when it comes to those feelings, where we put our attention sometimes, and what we do in terms of actions, can be the things that brings us back to that kind of middle ground. Because I don't think there is a constant state of happiness like at the top here. I've got a pen, but it's disappeared with the background up here, and you've got sadness down here. I think you're just supposed to be in the middle. And on the podcast I recorded the other day, I used the word contentment. I really like the word contentment, because if you're not too happy and you're not too sad, I think you're content with just how things are going. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. To that point, I've always viewed it as, there can't be any good without bad, because if everything was just good, it wouldn't be good. It would be neutral, because that would be the norm. And so it's like when people say everyone can be above average, it's like, well, by definition, they can't, because then that would be average if everyone was there. And so there has to be another level. But like, you don't have good without bad. You don't have happy without sad. You wouldn't experience the highs if you don't experience the lows, because there's nothing to compare it to. And so, but exactly what you said, I don't have the expectation of feeling amazing every day. I have the expectation of feeling how I'm feeling on any day.
Yeah.
And that being okay. It's like, I expect I'm going to feel some emotions today. I have no idea what they're going to be, but I'm just going to see what they are. And I think as well, you don't even have to label them. it's like, how do you feel today? It's like, well, I feel how I feel. Like, I guess you could say that's happy or sad or whatever it is, but it's like, I feel how I feel. And there's no kind of right or wrong with that. And I think, and again, because this is I think to be eligible for like an appointment with the I could be massively wrong here, but I think with like the NHS, if you need to speak to someone about being depressed, it's like if you're feeling sad for 2 weeks or more. And I think that's absurd because women get sad every month, and that's every 28 days. And so it's like, and that's hormonal, and it's like you could be sad for a year and not be depressed. It's like it could just be a hard year,
Yeah.
and so I think there's so much nuance to it that it's such a hard diagnosis, because again, it's on a spectrum. Like
Mm.
someone could be, have a job that they don't like and be broke, and they're sad. Doesn't mean they're depressed. It just means their situation's shit and they don't like it. You could have someone that lives in a mansion, has everything they'd ever want, and they're miserable. I'd say that's much more likely to be depression. Because the thing is once you have enough money to solve money problems, then you're left with everything else, which is, why the fuck am I here? Like, what's the meaning of my life? And I think a lot of men's depression in particular comes from not having a purpose big enough to take up their time. And so if you're not chasing that purpose, you will chase alcohol, like, short dopamine hits, women, all of these things that will distract you, because you're looking for a reason to exist. Whereas I think, like, I mean, I've found my purpose now, which is to help as many people as I can. And that's my drive. And so I found now, if I have those days where I'm like pondering on stuff or like dwelling on the past and kind of just being a bit stagnant, my response now is like, go to work. Like, go work. Like, go, like, you're feeling like this because you're deviating from your purpose. And so it's like, you need to shut that out and focus on this. And after a couple hours of working, I'm like, I feel great. Like, because I'm pursuing this thing. So I think, like, you mentioned the word contentment, and I don't think I've ever been content. It's like I'm always, I feel content when I'm uncomfortable. In that, if everything is just comfortable, I get really anxious and depressed, because the voice in my head goes, is this it? Like, is this your peak of your life? It's like, this is how much money you're going to make. This is going to be what your week looks like for the rest of your life, for the next 50 years, and then you die. And to me, that's a horrible feeling,
Yeah.
because the only thing that I enjoy is progression. And so it's like, if someone just, if the Grim Reaper patted me on the shoulder now and said, this is it, like, I'd be like, well, just take me now then. Because it's like, well, there's nothing else to do. And so, whereas like, I have to be progressing in something, whether it's work, like relationships, like a new hobby, training, like there has to be something that's improving in my life. Because if nothing is, then I get really down.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I'm chasing something at all times.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because I was tried my hardest to define what I thought it meant to me, the word contentment, the other day. And the guest I had on at the time, Anna Marie, was kind of saying, she was a mindfulness coach. So she came at it from a completely different angle. Like, contentment is being okay with the fact that things may stay the same forever. But I said the contentment for me was being able to continually improve in some way or another. And going back to the bit you say about things being calm, and if you was to look at moods like the weather anyway, or like life like the weather anyway, you have your days where it's blue skies, no clouds, but you know that just around the corner, the next thunderstorm is on its way, the next downpour, the next monsoon. And I think we have to be I think, again, it takes awareness to realize that just happens in life, right? The next business challenge, the next relationship challenge, the next disagreement with a family member, maybe. And again, it's being okay with that and knowing that you're going to deal with that situation the best you can at that time. But I do completely agree with you on the purpose thing. Obviously, I say obviously, you may not be aware, but I get coached by a guy called Paul Mort, and he's very much an action based coach on you're not feeling great. These are the reasons why. Action is the only answer. There's no wind that favors a ship without a destination that it wants to go to, right? So give yourself that destination, take the actions towards it, and following that plan. I say plan, you create the plan yourself, but following those guidelines, should I say, it leads to little wins, little successes, and adding them all up, which then gets to some improvement. And the thing that comes to my mind, and I'm sorry, Ben, this is something that's proper on my mind at the moment, is being outside your comfort zone. I have a question coming up for you shortly, but people are like, why are you training for this ultra marathon? You've never even done a marathon before. And the question is valid, but for the way I think and what creates, I'm going to use inverted commas here, contentment for me is knowing that in my day-to-day life or week-to-week life, I'm doing something which is going to try and progress me in some way or another. So that's me going out of my comfort zone. Where are you outside of your comfort zone at the moment?
It's a great question. And I think a lot of people would feel a lot more fulfilled in their life if they got out of that comfort zone. And it's still not even seen as the norm. Like, the first, if you said to me, oh, I'm training for an ultra, my response would never be, have you even done a marathon? I would go, that's fucking awesome. Like, I love people like setting just like very high goals. And so it's like I would never do a sprint triathlon before an Ironman. I'd be like, no, I'll just do a fucking Ironman. Like, what's the hardest one? I'll go do that. And because it's like, you mentioned like the weather, where you have, blue skies and then you have the storms. Like, I want to be someone that thrives in the storm. And like, I would pride myself on when shit does hit the fan, in my experience, like, I tend to be the person that people look at and go, well, what the fuck do we do? And I thrive in that situation. And I never want to be the guy that's like, well, I don't know. It's like, I want to be the one that like shows people what we need to do. And so like the only way you get good at weathering storms is going into fucking storms. And so it's like the only way you get better at stuff is by going into the discomfort. And so I would say right now, I've gone from just coaching one-on-one online for a couple years, and then overseeing 2 or 3 coaches, but not really managing a team. They were quite self-sufficient. To now, we have 8 full-time coaches. We have just under 600 online clients, and I oversee the entire coaching department.
Wow.
And that's everything from SOPs, coaching, like training programs, nutrition, the back end kind of CRM system of how we're tracking everything, like KPIs, all this shit that I'd never heard of. Like, I was just like, I just want to get people shredded. And now it's like, it's running it like a business. And it is uncomfortable for me because it's something that I haven't done before and don't have the evidence yet. And so it's like, well, how do I get the confidence? By doing it. And so it's like, I love that because it's like a new challenge for me. And then with fitness, I've got a really bad lower back just from years of squatting like an idiot. And like I hit, like during COVID, I hit 180 kilos for 20 in my garage, which was my lifetime goal. I was like, because I literally read this when I was like 16. Someone said, if you can squat 4 plates for 20 reps, you'll have big legs. And like, funnily enough, my legs are bigger now and I don't really squat anymore. But I always had
that's such a funny goal.
yeah, I know. And but it was only like 4 or 5 people have done it in the world. And it's squat and deadlift 600 pounds, so like 272.5 kilos, and run a 6-minute mile in the same day. And so like people have done the 5-5-5, like 500 pounds and 5-minute mile. But in that, the mile is the hardest because a 5-minute mile is rapid.
Yeah.
But you can't be like under 200 pounds and squat and deadlift 600 pounds. So you have to be heavier, which then makes the mile 10 times harder. And so not many people have managed to do that because the squat's probably the hardest part of that. So if I can get my hip and my lower back working again, I still want to pursue that. Just like for me, like, and again, no, because no one gives a shit, but like for me, I'd be like, I will call myself a fucking badass if I can do that in a day.
I'll call you a badass as well, Ben. Don't worry about that, bro. I'm
But
gonna call myself a badass if I get through this fucking ultra marathon as
dude,
well.
it'll be
I'll tell you that much.
it's such an awesome achievement. But it's like it's not even to say that you did an ultra. It's like you put your mind to something which was a big ask, and you did it. Like that's the evidence that you build, you know. And but yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So yeah, that's probably where I'm working on the discomfort right now. It's just more with work. It's gone less about fitness and more about like professional kind of career now. And I find it hilarious because like in the UK, it's like no one even knows what I do. And it's like I've probably been online coaching more than most of the guys that you see on Instagram, like longer than what they've done it. But I just do my work, and like I don't need to post about it. I'm whilst everyone else is making fucking TikToks, like I'm having conversations with clients. Like that's it.
That is something that I've very much noticed from your profile, mate, because I added you on Facebook, and then I've also been looking at your Instagram, because what I tend to do, I do a little bit of preparation when it comes to the show. And with that, I'll try and find something that I can make conversation from your like from content that you've put out,
There's nothing
or
on
something
mine.
that you've done. Yeah, but obviously there is stuff on yours. But I was like, wow, like this guy's been a coach and been involved in fitness for 15 years. It's like
Yeah,
so
yeah,
17 years. So no, 32. You're 32. Let's do the maths. Yeah, 15 years. I was right. Right, that's
yeah.
fine. With you, like quite clearly, you are not one of those coaches. Like I'm gonna just compare you and me. I'm very new to the thing. I like to put my stuff out there. Obviously I have to with the podcast and stuff, but you're very much an action based coach in
Sure.
terms of what you are doing. You're making sure that you're hitting your standards and then sharing them with your clients. So with Suprahuman, how did that opportunity arise? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, Ben.
Sure. So it initially came from I was just finishing my master's degree. I was living in Cardiff, doing my master's degree in Oxford Brookes part-time. That was like probably the two of the toughest years of my life. Like I still am well aware of how good I've got it. But it was, I was working 2 jobs, like gym receptionist, then personal training in the morning, drive into Oxford Brookes like 1 day a week, like do 8 hours of lectures, then drive back. And I did that for 2 years.
Wow.
And then as I was getting to the end, I had met a guy called Trevor Kashi, who's probably the smartest man I've ever met in my life. I think he's got the record in the US for like the youngest person to ever get a PhD. He was 18, which is absurd. But anyway, so I reached out to him back in I think 2014 through a random blog, just because some of the stuff he was saying about nutrition just flew in the face of everything that I was doing. And I thought he's never going to reply to me. Like I'm just going to email him some questions anyway. And he got back to me in like 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I was like, do you offer coaching? And at the time, because he was doing his PhD, he's like, yeah, it's like $100 a month or something, like something really cheap. And I was like, cool. So he prepped me for a show and we kept in touch just on Facebook. Like our whole relationship was Facebook Messenger till like end of 2017. And then he messaged me and said, I've just taken over. I've bought out my partners of my nutrition company and I need coaches. Would you be interested? And because at this point, he's kind of mentored me for like 3-4 years just through our conversations. And at the time I thought, I'm just helping out a friend. I'm not going to get paid for it. I'm just helping a buddy out because he's in a bit of a sticky point. And I was like, yeah, no problem. So he dumped like 70 clients on my lap and said, call all these people and get them to stick with you because they were all like, what's going on with the company? Like, I'm going to quit. And I managed to keep like 65 of them.
Wow.
Never coached online before. Like, I was like, how do I do this? And he's like, just do what I did for you. And I was like, cool. I look back now at some of like my check-ins and stuff, and they were dog shit, just like totally new to it. But anyway, coached with him up until January or December 2020. And the guy that I work for now, John Madsen, he had signed up as a client for this company because he wanted to learn how to coach online. He had a brick and mortar gym and he wanted to switch it to online just because you can scale it much bigger. And at the time, the company that I worked for, we were probably one of the best online coaching companies. And it happened to be that my boss is best friends of Alex Hormozy. And so we got a lot of referrals from him. And I trained with him in person for like 6 weeks out in Texas. He's an animal. Like at the time, he was just like, my joints were getting ground to dust like through those workouts. But
Wow.
like him and his wife, like incredible people, like just outstanding. But anyway, so I met John through this and coached him, and then he just advertised a position for like head coach. And at the time, I like just the culture of the company and the direction that we were going. I was kind of just a bit like, I don't really know where this is headed. Whereas John seemed to be on a bit of a rocket ship with his company. And just after having a conversation with him, he just exudes that, like, I don't have to believe in what you believe in, but I believe in you. Like, and so it's like, I like whatever you say you're going to do, even if it sounds, if he was like, we're going to fly to the moon, Ben, I'd be like, I don't believe we are, but I believe that you will find a way to do it. And
Nice. Yeah.
so I just believe in you. And so I think immediately after I saw him, he just made a post on Instagram. I called him and I was like, that sounds great. And he's like, dude, it's yours if you want it. And so within 2 days, quit my job, offloaded all my clients, started with him in January 2021, and have been with the company since. And so it's gone from, I think back then we had maybe 200 clients and, 4 coaches part-time. And now we'll probably be at 700 to 800 clients by the end of the year with 10 to 12 full-time coaches, and a team of 25 plus employees, which is crazy, but it's awesome.
Yes, that's so sick, mate. And you're in the States at the moment.
Yep.
Is that fully business related? Are you?
So we're in the process of sorting a work visa now. So I'm on my Esther at the moment, so I get 90 days and then I have to leave. So I'm coming back next week. But then hopefully within 3 months, I'll have a work visa so I can move out here. Because just the time difference, like all of my clients have been US based for 5+ years.
Wow.
And I'm working late every day. And then I come out here and it's like, I'm done with work by 4. And I'm like, this is how I want to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, gonna look to make the move next year, which will be awesome.
Going away from the fitness chat, what's the biggest differences between US and UK life then?
That's good. I would say Americans are far more entitled. They want things for nothing. I always say the biggest difference is an Englishman will brag about the bargain that they got. Like, look at this thing I got. Like, it was only this much. Americans will brag about how much they spend. And so they're like, oh, look at this thing. It costs this much. Like, it's like a status kind of thing. I think in general, it's like keeping up with the Joneses a bit more. Like, it's you got to have the bigger truck, the bigger house kind of thing. In terms of like as people, way more sensitive. Like English people are very dry and sarcastic, I think, just as a culture, and like that's my sense of humor as well. So I think I come off as like almost a bit rude to Americans, but like it's fine. Like most of my American friends that I'm very good friends with, they have English senses of humor, and so like they're very sarcastic, and all their friends think they're rude. But to me, they're just the norm. But really, just like the standard of living and stuff is nicer. Like where I am now, so I'm in Utah. The weather's great. You know, they have full seasons. You know, like you could ski in the winter. Like in the summer, it's like 40 degrees and dry. Like it's great. But yeah, I think the biggest thing though is they have a lot more. I think just from a population standpoint, because it's bigger, there's a larger number of people that have a lot more like dispendable income, and so they're much more open to paying for coaching and masterminds and mentorships and having business coaches. Whereas, you know, a lot of the population in the UK right now is really struggling, and they don't have two pennies to rub together, let alone paying someone, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pounds a month to give them their fucking macros, you know, and so I think it's a lot harder to make a good living in the UK just because of, as a culture, we're frugal. And whereas in the US, they're a lot more kind of liberal with their spending. So I would say, like, if you're not, I mean, if your goal from coaching is to make money, you're not going to be a good coach anyway, because you're in it for the wrong reasons. But if you are looking to make more money with coaching, just logically, the US demographic is fucking great. Because there's a never-ending supply of overweight people, and they have more money, and so it's like, and that might sound shallow, but that's just the facts of business. Like, supply and demand. You know, there's a higher demand and there's plenty of supply, so it's like, it just works better.
Yeah, amazing. And being a podcast listener as well, I think one of the biggest dynamics I think that anyone would probably struggle with, maybe it's just because of what I listen to with regards to Rogan and stuff, but just the differences of opinions on and the different angles that people can come at from like a political angle, right? Whether it be, yeah, well, obviously all of the things that are in the news at the moment. Have you found that to be not a struggle necessarily, but found that to be slightly more different than the UK?
Yeah, so I would say as a country in the UK, we're far less patriotic about, like, I mean, it used to be like, you know, we're proud, we're English kind of thing, but like we don't have English flags on our lawns, you know, whereas in the US, it's, if you have a, you know, a US flag on your front of your garden, that's the norm. And I think, you know, people will fight each other over political views. Like, if I said to you, like, I'm pro Boris Johnson, and you were like, nah, he's an idiot, then we just move on. Like,
Yeah.
we don't, like, you know, like, well, let's fight, like, kind of thing. It's like people are a lot more politically driven in the US, and a lot more patriotic. But I think that comes from the US education, like, school system. The way they teach history is all built upon how America is the greatest country in the world. And whereas English culture, we don't really do that. We just kind of say it how it happened. And so like Thanksgiving, for example, it's like, yeah, that's where we broke bread with the Indians. It's like, it's where you massacred them. Like, and so it's like, it's not like it like for, and there's some Americans that like don't get behind that. Like, if you ask like a red Indian person, not like Indian like we'd say in the UK, but like an Indian person, do you celebrate Thanksgiving? They'd be like, fuck no. Like, it's the worst of the year. And so it's like, but it's how you're raised. So I think they can be a bit delusional into like how amazing their country is, but don't get me wrong, like, it's an amazing place to live. And that's where I kind of, you know, where we're from, like Stoke and Yeovil, it's like, it's not a bad place by any means, but we're not living it up, you know, like, we don't have penthouses and stuff, you know, we don't own third and second and fourth homes, you know, and things like a holiday is you go camping down Cornwall kind of thing. And so it's like, but like, we're still very privileged to even be in that situation. But I think just from having that background to then going over here and you know, you just hear people talk, we call it first world problems, where it's like people bitch about their coffee being too hot and stuff, and I'm like, fucking grow up. Like, it's like, if that's the problem that you have today, is that someone messed up your Starbucks order, like, congratulations, you're winning at life. Like, you don't have to deal with anything else. So it's like, I think it, coming from that background, is allowed to give me a really good perspective on what's an actual problem and what's just a luxury, like, inconvenience to have. Because I just don't care about that shit. Like someone messes up my order, I'm like, well, guess I'm having a cappuccino today. Like, and it's like moving on. I'm gonna have 3 more coffees today. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, people love to, just turn the screw on like that one thing and let it ruin their day. And I think this is a bit of a side tangent, but it's one of my favorite videos that Alex Hormozy put out, and it was about morning rituals and affirmations and meditations and things. And he would say like the problem with them is that they turn into crutches, where people like, I can't work unless I do my gratitude journal, I go walk barefoot outside, I say my affirmations. And his view is like, I hope that all my competitors have these rituals because I will fuck them up,
Yeah.
and then they won't be able to perform. Whereas he's like, I want to be able to perform like with a cup of coffee and then I get to fucking work. And to me, that screams resilience, in that it's like, I want to be able to wake up having not had ideal sleep, not ideal nutrition. I slept funny, my back aches, but I have my laptop. I can grab a coffee and I can kick ass. And like, I don't want to be like, no, I need my infrared sauna and my hyperbaric chamber and all this biohacking bullshit to, like I said, I'll kick your ass right now. Like, I don't need 3 hours of prep.
Yeah.
And like, I try and train and live that way, where it's like, yeah, like these things are great, like, cold plunges and all that stuff. It's like, if you find benefit, great, but you don't want to use them to the point that now they're a crutch and that you need it. And so it's like, I'm always like, yeah, I like, if I have my weight belt with me, I'll use it when I'm in the gym. If I don't, I can still train. Like if I have straps, I'll use them. If I don't, I can still train. Whereas like guys would be like, oh, I forgot my AirPods, I can't train today. It's like, you're a fucking pussy. Like it's like, go and sing to yourself. Like it just, I think like, as a society, we're fragile at the moment. And it's like, I get to work in my pants at home, like, and train in an air-conditioned gym and go and do cardio in a nice fancy room and have the ability to go and buy whatever food I want down the road and weigh it and portion it out like to suit my needs. And so it's like, if the only thing I have to experience is some muscle soreness and a bit of hunger, like, go me.
Yeah. Happy
Like
days.
I've done a really good job, like, kind of thing. So I think just that perspective is that people need to realize, like, you really want perspective, go fucking live in Africa, like, and then you'll come back having a new appreciation for everything.
Mate,
Yeah, for sure.
I love the tangent. I can hear the passion coming through for all the way from the
Yeah.
US. It's good. Mate, we've spoken on some amazing subjects today, and we're definitely around the hour mark now, which is amazing. I've got obviously you spoke a little bit then actually about something that I've changed into my language, especially with like my clients and when I speak on the podcast now about like a morning routine and how it can become a non-negotiable and stuff. Obviously,
Mhm.
there are no such thing as non-negotiables because you, like you say, you want to be ready for action as soon as possible. But I'm going to
Yeah.
say for you, in terms of your mindset and your mental and physical health, what are the 5 things that you like to keep in your weekly
Sure.
schedule? If you were to, if you had the choice to keep them in there, they would be there.
Yeah, no, I like that frame of like, in an ideal day, what would you do?
Yes.
And it's like, I don't need these things, but I would like to have these things because I can perform better. It would be coffee first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Nice.
Like, again, not a non-negotiable. Like, I'm not going to die if I don't have one, but I
It
I'd feel
helps.
good to have a coffee. Yeah. Um, some kind of morning activity, even if it's going for a 10-minute walk outside. Like at the moment, I'll have a coffee and I'll go train. But in the UK, I'll wake up, have coffee, and then just go for like a 10-minute walk because I train around noon, just because of my work schedule. A good breakfast. I used to kind of backload my calories so I could like feast at night. And I wouldn't set like strict times on fasting and feasting kind of things, but I would just push my calories to later in the day so I wasn't hungry when I went to bed. I've kind of changed that a bit now, in that like, I love brunch. Like, brunch is my favorite meal. And so like, if I can like have a coffee, go train, do a little bit of work, and then go get a good brunch, like, I've won my day.
What's
Like
your
at that.
ideal brunch then, Ben?
Ooh. So I would say In the UK, it's going to be poached egg, avocado, and toast.
Yeah, nice.
Sourdough. It's a basic bitch one, but it's pretty good. I do like a full English, but it's a bit heavy for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so I've found, and this is probably from years of just eating like a bodybuilder, I don't do well on a ton of high fat. Like it just destroys my stomach. And I'll have a full English and then I'll be spraying the pan 30 minutes after.
I was gonna say there aren't many full Englishes you can eat that don't just fly
Yeah.
out an hour
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
And so that's maybe like a once a week kind of treat thing. No, like knowing that there's an escape route like
Yeah.
afterwards. But yeah, that'll probably be my brunch. Over here, it's been, so we need to do this in the UK. There's bagel shops everywhere, and you get like a good breakfast bagel,
Yeah.
like a French toast bagel with egg, ham, cheese, bacon. Sets me up. So
I'm
what's that? Is
feeling
that
that.
three? Is that
Three,
three or
yeah,
is that
two more.
two more? Like working out, like just going to the gym. And I trained in my garage all through COVID, and it was great. What a luxury to be able to still train, when everyone was struggling. But then when I went back to a gym, I realized what I'd been missing, like
Yeah,
just the atmosphere, other people getting after it, meeting new people. Like I train so much harder, whether it's just being in that environment, whether it's like an ego thing and it's like you want to look like, you can shift some weight and but you just train harder, when you're around other people.
for sure.
So like in a good gym anyway. And lastly, so this is a new one that I've just implemented this like actively. Like you'll do this indirectly, I think, without even trying, just by being who you are. But me and my therapist have just implemented this, is like RAK, so random acts of kindness. And so you try and do one a day. But it's maybe it's a few a week, but the rules are it can't be with someone that you know.
Oh wow.
And so like it can't just be as easy as like sending a random person on your WhatsApp a message. It has to be a stranger. And so a lot of times, because it's convenient for me, I'll strike up a conversation with a random person in the gym that I don't know. And so like last week, it was this old dude called Danny in this gym in Utah that I see every morning just getting after it. And I said to him, I was like, I love just seeing you get after it in the morning. Like it just pumps me up. And then we spoke for like 20 minutes just about training, diet, like work and stuff. And it's like now every time I go to the gym, bump fists, have a catch up, like
Hey,
cool. But it's like that probably, maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but it might have made his day. Like just be like, oh, someone's recognized that I'm training hard. So I think like that as like as a nice icing on the cake to make it a good day. And I can't remember where I read this, but it was, if you're ever feeling down, go help someone else.
so true, mate.
Because one, it makes you feel good helping someone else. And even if it doesn't, you still helped someone else. Like, and I think like if you really, I mean, because I've done a lot of like introspection over the last year or so, just like, people talk about like, what are your values? And it's like your values in life. And people always say the noble ones, like honesty and loyalty and all of this shit. And they're so nuanced in that they're all situation dependent. In like, if you look from a business standpoint, loyalty isn't really rewarded these days. Like insurance companies charge you more, like after your fucking first year of car insurance. Like if you sign up to Netflix as a new customer, you get the best deal. Like you don't get the best deals when you've been with them for a long time. It's like the newer client always has the best deal. So loyalty isn't rewarded. And then with honesty, it's like there's always situations where you being honest serves no one. Where like, let's just say your missus comes back from a shit day and she's just bought a new dress to make herself feel better, and she asks you how it looks and it looks fucking awful. But you're like, if I say that it looks awful right now, how is that going to make this any better? Like I could just say, you look great. Like, okay, technically you were dishonest, but it's like, so so I don't really like those kind of values because they're all on a continuum anyway. How honest are you? How loyal are you?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it's like you could be loyalty to a fault and it fucks you over. You know, how many people stay in jobs because they think that they should be loyal when it logically makes no sense and they should go get another job? And so really what I've kind of broke it down to is kind of like three things, which is be useful to someone, like, which goes back to like helping people. Just
Yep.
be useful. It could be as simple as carrying something for someone or paying them a compliment. Like, be useful, and do fun shit with cool people.
I
Like,
like that.
that's the second one. And then the last one is always just strive to be someone who does what they say they're going to do. And so even if someone thought that I was an asshole, if they still said, but if he said he's going to do something, he does it, I'll take that. Like, I'll take that as a compliment, because like words are like the lowest level of confirmation to me. It's like people will say like actions speak louder than words, which I totally agree with, but patterns speak louder than actions. Anyone can do a good deed once. Anyone can be a piece of shit once. But it's like, what do you repeatedly do? And so not what you repeatedly say, but like, what are the repeated actions that you do over time? That's how you can see who someone is. And like, I never judge someone off one thing that they do. But if they keep doing it, then I'm going
Yeah.
to have a pretty good idea of who they are.
Yeah.
And so I tend to ignore words. Like, one of my favorite sayings is like, show me. Like, just show me. Like, you don't need to tell me, show me. Like, I don't need to tell you who I am. You will see it through my reputation, of how other people speak about me, of how I carry myself, of how I speak to you, like how I treat you. Like, I don't need to tell you. Most of the time, if someone says to you, I'm a good person, they're a fucking dick. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you I'm a good person. You should just feel that from me. And so I will just always strive to, I say strive because no one can be perfect at it. Like, no one can always do everything that they say they're going to do, because we're not perfect. But my goal is to stack as much evidence over that side compared to the side of the things that I say I'm going to do and I don't. And so like, the bigger I can make that ratio, I think the more fulfilled I'm going to be. But like, if I can do those three things, the honesty, loyalty, all of that shit, like, that umbrella's down from those things anyway. And so if I do those things, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content.
Wow, mate. I thought this conversation would be good, but you are over exceeding expectations.
I appreciate it.
No, no, mate. Honestly, you speak with such wisdom. Obviously, those podcasts you're listening to are helping, just like they're
Great.
helping me as well with this content. But no, it's yeah, it's really interesting to hear you speak. And in regards to that skill, I'm gonna use the word skill of being able to approach somebody you don't know and offer them a compliment and or help them with something, be useful to them. For me, luckily, I'd say I'd be okay at doing that. But there's
Yeah.
always room to be better at doing that. I'm not, you're always going to get that element of that voice in your head going, what if they pie me off, or what if they say no,
Yeah.
or whatever, right? That's always going to be there. But I think when we speak about the ultra marathon, or you going into being a manager, managing coaches for the first time, those doubts are always there. But if you were to freeze at those doubts and not carry out the action that you are about to take because of your voice in your head, that voice then only gets louder. And where I was actually going with the point was, I think it would be interesting to survey, I don't know, the the category of the age group 21 to 30 in the Yeovil area, and ask, would you be confident or comfortable approaching another person and just offering them a compliment, or cracking a conversation starter with them who you'd never met before? I would be surprised. In fact, what do you think the percentage would be, just in general conversation? I think it would be so low.
It would be low, and I think women are quite good at complimenting other women, generally speaking.
Agreed.
I think men could do a better job at complimenting other men. I don't think either. I don't think men or women realize how much men just appreciate a thank you, or I appreciate you doing that. I think generally we have very low needs of like that confirmation that we're doing the right thing, but just like you're awesome, It's like, cool, like that will keep me going for a month. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't need that shit every day, but like, you know, like those compliments will live with you for a long, long time. But I think, and Chris Williamson has spoken about this on his podcast, that between men and women is where it starts to get a bit tricky. Because I think we're in this stage now where men don't want to come across as creeps and paying a compliment. Like, because I find it really hard where, like, if I see a woman that looks great in the gym physically, my first thought isn't like, oh my God, they're so hot. It's, I am fully aware of how much work is required to look like that. So if I pay them a compliment and say, like, you look fantastic, what I mean behind that isn't I want to sleep with you. It's, I am well aware of the work that you're putting in, and I really respect that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, they might be hot, like, as well, but it's like, I don't like, but you always hesitate that compliment because it's like, well, what if they think I'm just a creep?
Yeah.
And the harsh reality is, the only difference between a woman viewing that compliment or whatever it is as creepy or not is if they find you attractive, period. In that, you could say, to like, two guys could say the exact same thing to a woman, and one they find very attractive and one they find unattractive. One's a creep, one's flirting. There's no other difference.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just the, like, so you have to just take the risk. And so it's, there's, and my therapist says this, which is amazing. It's like, there's no such thing as rejection, only redirection.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
it's, you if you try something, three things will happen. One of three things will happen. You get the thing, you are told not yet. So like, this could be, you attempt your ultra and maybe you don't get it the first time round, but then you're like, fuck this, next time I'm going to get it. Like, you're just told you need to go put in more work. Or the third one is, it wasn't meant for you. And so, and you know that one is because if you're not willing to try again.
Yes.
And so it's like, that's because people will go, well, how do I know if it's one or two? It's like, you'll know, because if like, you won't take no for an answer, like, if that's the thing that is for you. Whereas if you just give up after the first one, it's like, yeah, it wasn't meant for you then. Like, and that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think if you take that approach with, like, that situation, like complimenting women, it's like, well, if they say, get lost, you creep, it's like, well, she obviously wasn't right for you then, was she?
Yeah. Why
Like,
would you want to go out with somebody who calls you a creep anyway?
exactly. So it's like, it's not, it's only rejection if you take it as rejection.
Yeah.
Where she's doing you a favor, she's saving you time. So, but I think, like, the confidence of doing that, I think one, like, comes from, like, in the gym setting anyway. Like, I would say, you know, you're probably far more confident to do that now, having been through your journey, than say when you first started it.
Oh my
You
God, mate. Yeah, I could probably not think of anything worse. Yeah, at the
know,
time.
totally. And so, like, that, like, I think, like, living it, like, I think does give you that confidence. And I think, like, it sounds really, like, shallow, but it's like, again, people just don't talk like this anymore. But like, being objectively, like, reasonably looking, you're gonna have more confidence, like, giving other people compliments. Like,
Mate,
that's just it.
I remember once being told over message, I don't mind admitting this is an exclusive. You can't shag a personality.
Yeah. It's like, it's the, and but again, we live in this society now where it's like, you it's frowned upon to call someone fat. And it's like, but like, and this is what I never understood, is like, if you made fun of someone like being lanky or having a big nose, like, people just accept that, even though that person had no say in
No.
size of their nose or their height. But you have a say in being overweight. And so it's like, if anything, it should be acceptable to make fun of something that someone can change, but not make fun of the thing which they were born with. But it's a weird,
The minefield.
it's a minefield now, and you feel like you have to be so careful on social media and stuff as well. And like, the whole, like, I remember years ago, and I definitely probably went about it the wrong way, because I was 19 and just a dick. But like, it came out, like, about plus size models
Yeah.
And like there was like a picture on Facebook floating around of Marilyn Monroe being like, she was the most beautiful woman and she was a size 14 or 16 or whatever. It's like, you can be beautiful, but it's like, one, she was physically very pretty. That had nothing to do with the size of her. But two, like, I'm pretty sure like she did a bunch of drugs and was like a prostitute or was like a bit on the side for the president. So it's like, is that a good role model? Like,
Mm,
probably not. And so like my view of it was like, plus size modeling's bullshit, because if you could give these girls a pill to have them lose all their weight, would they take it? Fuck yeah. And so it's like, so they don't really, maybe there are some that genuinely love how they look, and I'm all for that. Like, awesome. But the sad fact is, and most won't admit it, they don't like the way they look. But they've just found this niche of like, I can convince myself that it's okay for me to be overweight, even though I don't really want to be overweight. But now I have this personality that I have to be the plus size model. And they're kind of in this like niche where it's like, deep down, you would rather just be a model, but like you weren't cut out for it, which is fine. Like, modeling is like the top 0.1% of the world. That's why it was supermodels. Like, you don't have an Olympics for average athletes. It's like, it would be like, no, we're going to have the 100 meters for people that can only run 12 seconds plus. You were like, well, no, it's for the elite. Like, modeling was for the elite. And so it's like, if you're not good looking, sorry, like, take up something else. It's like, I can't play in the NBA because I'm fucking 5'10" and white. Like, sorry, like, there's no
yeah.
amount of dribbling skills that I can have that are going to put me in comparison to LeBron. Like, it's just the way it goes. And so it's this like, it's this balance now of, you have to accept what you've got and make the most of it. And no one like, the world doesn't owe you anything to conform to accept you, like, for what you are. Like, the world is the world. Like, it's, you just have to accept yourself for what you've got. And so, like, no one owes you anything. Like, just I mean, you go down a fucking rabbit hole of pronouns and gender and stuff, but it's like, no one owes you anything. Like, no, like, the world doesn't owe you shit.
Yeah.
And so it's, you have to go out there and do what you want to do, and, not fear judgment of anyone else, and pursue what you deem meaningful and fulfilling. And maybe other people will think that it's stupid, but it's like, cool. And equally, like, these plus size models, like, from what I've just said, could look at me and be like, well, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about. And I can go, okay.
Yeah.
Like, like, if it, like, if you're getting riled up by a randomer saying this stuff, then it's like, that's a reflection on you, not me. Like, if someone says, oh, I've never heard of Ben, but I think he's a dick, I'll be like, okay. Like, it's just like, it doesn't mean anything. And so I think just having that skill of not, like, just doing what you want to do. And like, I mean, I'm 32 now, and I've only just started to, like, really not really give a shit what anyone thinks. Like, outside of like when someone says that I don't care what anyone thinks, that's a complete lie, because everyone
For
does.
sure.
But
Exactly. Yeah.
but like, in terms of, I care about what everyone thinks, but I'm not going to let that dictate my behavior outside of my very close friends and family, who I respect their opinion and trust that they're being honest with me and have my best interest at heart. But if a random person makes fun of the fact that I wear Crocs, like, I like Crocs, like, and I'll keep wearing them. And so it's like, it's, life's a lot more fun when you're just being yourself. But
Yeah.
it takes time. Like, it takes a lot of time and practice, I think.
It's one of the things that I would say that I've improved hugely at,
Yeah.
not worrying about what other people think, but you're a human at the end of the day, and you need to know that people like you. Otherwise, if you go back thousands of years, if nobody in your clan liked you, you're not getting fed.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, yeah. There's
Yeah.
no beating around the bush. So that that feeling of being a caveman is still within us. It's part of you, and you're gonna feel that anyway. One of the best, if anybody here is enjoying what me and Ben are talking about today, one of the best opening books to a change of mindset, in my opinion, which changed my mindset on this subject of not really being worried about what other people think, is a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson.
Oh, one of my favorite books. I read it at least once a year.
It's just so good, and puts into perspective why it's important to only give fucks about certain things and not whether your coffee order's right. But going back to your point about like the opinions and what you were saying around like the obese argument or the gender category argument, is that one thing that I would say about life and people is there's more of an avenue for people to offer their opinions now and then disagree with other people's opinions. So somebody may listen to this podcast, right, and say Harry chats absolute bollocks, the guests he gets on don't know what they're talking about, full stop. And I'll go, okay, well, this podcast isn't meant for you. Somebody else may have an opinion and it get challenged or told that it's shit, and that person, because of potentially a level of self-awareness or personal resilience, will lose their shit and label that person as something that they're just not. They've got a different opinion to them. And that's, I think, how unfortunately life is kind of being filtered into a narrow stream of. And it's really important for me to know that I think there's a stat that 1 in 6 people won't like you anyway. Like just because that's just the way it is. Like you can do anything in the world to make that person like you, but that ain't gonna make you happy. So fuck them. Basically, you may as well just be yourself. So because only what, I don't even know what percentage that is. Like, let's just say, let's use 15% as the maybe 17.5. There we go. 17.5% of people in the world aren't going to like you anyway. So you may as well just be yourself and not really care too much whether everybody likes you or not.
It's huge, and it's one of the things which really drew me to like this company, Superhuman, is like the whole brand that we show, that my boss has built, is like we don't want to we almost don't want to be relatable, where it's like, we make it clear to all of our coaches, like, you have to be in shape, like, year round. Like, you have to look the part. Like, you're like, you might have 1 or 2 clients that are like shredded and look insane and they might be in better shape than you, but like, you should be in the top 10% year round. And that's the standard that we have. And like, I've rejected coaching applications where I've looked at their Instagram, they're out of shape. And I'm like, sorry, you're not going to fit our culture. Like, because everyone here, we talk shit about each other, like to our face. I big up my team behind their back, but I just talk shit to their face. But like, we're very competitive. Like, next year we're having a sales team versus coaches, like, combine in the gym, which will be like, who's the more jacked team out of the sales guys and the coaches. And so everyone on our team lives to that standard. And so people will look at the marketing and be like, this guy is stuck up his own ass, loves material stuff, and is just like, like, one of our marketing things is like, don't even apply if you make less than 125K a year, because you can't afford us. And then everyone shits on it, being like, well, I can help anyone. Like, they don't have to make any money and I can help. And he's like, cool, then go help them. Like, I'm going to go and work with these people that are successful CEOs. That's our target demographic. And it's like, Lamborghinis don't make shit cars. Like, if you want a shit car, go buy a Volvo. Like, it's like, no one's making you buy this, but it's like, we're the Lamborghinis of fitness kind of thing. And so it will repel certain people massively.
Yeah.
They will despise us.
It's
and
a
be like,
perfect marketing tool, right?
Totally. But it's like, we will heavily attract the people that we want to attract, and will repel people that don't align with the message. But people are so scared of standing for something. And they're like, my opinion as a fitness coach is, you don't have to look like a bodybuilder year round, but you should be in better shape than most of your clients. Like, unless you're training Olympians, like, you should, like, this, like, even Andy Roda, it's like, he had his little like gut. He could out squat anyone in that gym without any warm up with bad knees. He'd destroy you. And he'd out sprint you. Like he'd out jump you. And it's like he had the go. And so it's like if you're training people to improve their body composition, then you should look like you've improved your body composition. And so like people will say, well, no, it's about knowledge and all this stuff. But like again, the world that we live in, you put a personal trainer that's in shape and a personal trainer that's out of shape, like you're probably going to pick the one that's in shape. Like maybe this one gets the clients that like would feel insecure by that person. We don't want those people. Like we don't want those people in our program. Like it's like we want people that be like, I want to look like that. Like that doesn't even look attainable to me, but I want it badly.
Mm.
And it's like that's like if you like next year, if you line up our team of like coaches and salespeople, you'd be like, this looks like a fucking figure show. Like, but it's like that's the standard that we hold. And like, and I said to the coaches, like, because we had like a pool party in July. Like we had a 2-day event and then we had a pool party afterwards. And I said to them, like, if you're out of shape, like at this pool party, like I ain't gonna be happy. And it's like you all better look like you're in shape. And every single one of them was in shape. And it's like that's the culture that we have. Whereas like most other companies don't have that kind of standard. And like even if like every week, like if I look and I see that one of our coaches is like getting fucking lazy, I'm like, you're not living to the company values. Like you need to step up. And if they, you know, fall out or someone else comes in, then it's like, well, that's the standard. Like, and it's like, and it's like it's hard. Like I want to eat pizza, like and enjoy myself. But it's like I'm the head of the whole thing. And so it's like if I'm not in good enough shape that I can whip my top off at any point, I'm not living to my standard. And it's a hard standard to live by. Like it's not easy. Like people will say, oh, you're just in shape, you're on. It's like I have the same cravings and urges as you. Like I don't want to do my cardio every day. Like I don't want to go to the gym every day when I'm sore, but I will because that's the standard that I have to hold.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's just levels up. And like it goes back to like, can everyone be above average? No, like by definition. And so it's like we're above average, like we're above the average. That's what we're trying to be. And so it's in today's society, it's almost frowned upon. And that's why we get so much flack, but then we also get so much business. And so it's like, because deep down, a lot of people want it, but they just don't want to admit it because it makes them look self-conceited or narcissistic or whatever it is. But it's like until you admit to yourself, it's like, yeah, I want a six-pack so I look fucking good down the beach and look better than all my friends. It's like, now you're speaking your truth.
Mm.
Like, whereas if you're like, oh, you know, I just want to get healthy, it's like, fuck you. Like, that's bullshit. Like, you don't even know what health means. Like, you want to look jacked and shredded and confident. Like, and as soon as you admit that, then we can start building it. But if you're just playing that game of like, I'm doing it for my family, it's like, no, you're not. Like, and
You're
if you are,
lying.
it's not going to be, it's not going to be sustainable. And so, like, my boss has a gift of like ripping that truth out of people of like, what is it that you truly want? And then our coaches all have the gifts of like, okay, we found out what you truly want. What obstacles do we face like in your day-to-day life that prevent you from getting that? Like whether it's like knowledge, you know, just logistics, not knowing what to do, like just basically the game plan and helping them navigate it. Like that's where we get so many awesome transformations. But it's just it's the perfect combination. But again, people just don't want to admit it. It's like if you ask me like, why do you want to be in shape? It's like, well, I want to look attractive year round. Like I like to walk into the gym and feel like I'm in the top percentile of guys in the gym. Like I like feeling strong, like and being able to move weight and being fit. Like I also don't want to die young. Like, you know, even though like lifting weights is probably going to take years off your life, like anyway, to an extent, there's like a point of diminishing returns. But it's like all of that stuff's about me. Like I said, that's why I do it. Like it's like I don't stay in shape like for some noble reason. It's like because I like looking fucking jacked. Like that's it.
Yeah.
And it's that's enough meaning for me to want to go to the gym and work out every day. Like because I love it. You
I
know?
think that's a really cool way to wrap up the show, mate. I've got one final question, which I ask it at the end of every show. What is the greatest bit of advice that you've ever been given?
I think it is from uh my therapist, James Elliott, and this is a quote that he has at the end of his book, which is, you can drown in a paddling pool or the ocean. The depth of water is irrelevant. The point is that someone is drowning and needs your help. And once they've been saved, they need to be taught how to swim so they can save themselves. And so really what I learned from that is someone else's problems may seem trivial to you, but they're the ocean to that person. And so what I may deem as a problem in my life is a luxury to someone else, but it's still a problem that I'm struggling with. And so just from that, it taught me to, again, going back to when I was a kid, being like, just grow up. Like, it doesn't, like, I wouldn't be dealing with that. Like, but it's like this, it's not me. And so I think just if you lead with compassion and empathy, regardless of if you think something is silly, it's clearly not silly to that person. And so I think if you have the ability to help someone through it, then you are obliged to do so. And then if you can help them overcome it, then you're also obliged to do so. But I think it's just really just don't judge people for their problems, no matter how big or small, because it's no one knows what anyone else is truly going through, like truly. And so like and equally, it's none of your fucking business. And so it's like, it's no one's, like, that's down to social media. It's like, it's put everyone's business out there for the world. And that's why my social media is very boring, because I've done amazing things this summer, which will never get posted. And if you go, why not? I'll go, because it's none of your fucking business. Like, it's my life. I'm going to live it. And the people that I want to share it with, I will share it with. But like,
they were the people that were there, right?
exactly. And so, but yeah, just don't judge people for their problems, because you have no idea what other people are going through.
Ben, final one. Where can people come and find you if they do want to come and find your boring social media?
Yeah, if you want to find some boring social media posts, it's Ben Oliver with 2 L's 836 on Instagram, and our company Instagram is Suprahuman Official, if you want to look at some transformations and stuff.
Insane. This has been another episode of the 100% podcast from me, your host, Harry Purdy, and today's guest from Suprahuman, Mr. Ben Oliver. It's an absolute privilege to speak to Ben today on all sorts of different subjects and expertise levels that he has. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and drop a 5-star review. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hello, make sure you click the like button and click subscribe. It does help the show out a long, long way. Have a great day. I'll speak to you very, very soon. Take care.